Greetings, science fiction and fantasy enthusiasts. Do you read books? Do you watch films? Do you hate deodorant? Then welcome to our podcast. You're listening to No Deodorant in Outer Space with Ryan Sean O'Reilly. Now, let's get started.
It had never occurred to me that our lives, which had been so closely interwoven, could unravel with such speed. If I'd known, maybe I'd have kept tighter hold of them and not let unseen tides pull us apart. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of No Deodorant in Outer Space. My name is Ryan Sean O'Reilly, and I'll be guiding you along the solar spheres as we glide into port and discuss yet another topic of ill report. The movie, Never Let Me Go. This is the second portion of our podcast. We covered the book last time, and this time we're going to cover the movie that was directed by Romanek, and that came out, I believe, in 2010, starring Keira Knightley. Joining me once again is Dan Gonzalez. Dan?
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. And also Margret O'Reilly, my cousin.
Hello.
Welcome back. So, just to get things going, I was going to go around the horn real quick and give our opening comments to see if anyone, had any summary statements about the movie. And maybe I'll start it off if I can pull up my notes here correctly. Second. So my opening comment to kind of sum up my thoughts for the movie is that it's a fair enough adaptation that managed to capture the breathless quality of a very nuanced novel. So that was my kind of overall impression. Dan, I'll go to you next. Do you have maybe like a one-sentence summary of your thought of the movie?
I thought the movie was a general adaptation which focused more on the dynamic of the relationships between Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy as opposed to the general theme of the movie.
The book.
Yeah.
Okay. And Margaret, what about you? Do you have a kind of a quick one-sentence summary of your overall impression of the movie?
I think the movie was a thoughtfully interpreted adaptation to the book with a focus on the relationship aspect.
All right. Fair enough. So the movie was directed by Romanek. He was born September 18th, 1959. He's also still alive, just like the author. Interestingly enough to us here is that he was born in Chicago, Illinois, which is where we're at right now in downtown in Streeterville?
Streeterville, yes.
Streeterville. Like we said last time, we're in a skyscraper in Streeterville, and we have the city lights around us, and you can hear the traffic a little bit in the background.
We're about a block away from Navy Pier.
Yeah. Is the river not far from here? Can we see the river?
We can see the river to our right, Navy Pier, and the lake right in front of us. And to the left, we've got actually more lake and Northwestern, the hospital.
Nice. Yeah. We got the city lights all around us. So the city is alive, even though it's a nice late weekend night. So, yes, the director was born here. Mark Romanek, he started, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, so I apologize for that, but he started off his career getting into music videos, and he had a lot of success with these. He actually won, I think, 3 Grammys. But I was going through on Wikipedia the videos he did, and a lot of them, I was familiar with. He did the Nine Inch Nails song Hurt, but he did the Johnny Cash version of the cover of that, which I think was a very famous take on that song. And he also did the video for The Perfect Drug. I think I remember that as well. He also did Cochise by Audio Slave, Are You Gonna Go My Way by Lenny Kravitz. He did Criminal by Fiona Apple, Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Did a Madonna. He worked with Janet Jackson, Taylor Swift. So the guy had a very, very successful music video career. After that, he eventually did some commercials. I think he did some commercials for Apple, and he kind of focused on his family. So he had this real promising career in music videos, and then for the purposes of, I guess, Hollywood or whatever, he kind of fell off the radar for a little while and focused on his family and just kind of did commercial work, which allowed him to be more choosy about the next creative projects he was going to get into. One of his first, I I don't think this was his first feature film, but it was like his first technically feature film.
I think he did the one with Robin Williams.
Yeah, 1 Hour Photo.
Yeah.
He did that one. That was like his first. I think he did like maybe like an indie one before that. I had some conflicting information about that, but for sure he did 1 Hour Photo, which was an interesting film, I think. I can't remember if I saw it, but Robin Williams played against type. He was like the bad guy, I believe.
Yeah, he worked in a one of those larger stores, the photo guy, and he was an odd character who then would take on, again, it's another interesting personality, complex personality type of story. So, are we having a podcast on 1 Hour Photo, or I could go further?
No, but I think it's interesting that he did that, and then I think
because like the gist of it. Do you want to know the gist?
Yeah.
And now, have you seen this, Dan?
1 Hour Photo.
Probably. I think I did.
I think Robin Williams did another one like this with Al Pacino. I forget what that one was called.
Sam?
Yeah, might have been, where he also played against type. And this might be the second time he played against type, I think.
And by against type, you mean?
Well, Robin Williams is a comedian and like a likable guy. And this, isn't he playing the bad guy in 1 Hour Photo?
True. Oh, so, okay. Sorry.
So that's what I meant by like Robin Williams is playing against his own type, like his typical casting.
Right. And so that also parallels with the fact that this book is kind of on the edge of what a type should be in terms of classification, is the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The movie's not necessarily, or I didn't see it.
Right. It's not typically sci-fi, not typically, it's not easily classified.
It was kind of like a romance pulled out of.
I can see that.
So versatility of characters and the individuals involved and the themes across the board. Seems like these two are a good match to make a movie.
Yeah, and from what I could tell is Kazuo Ishiguro was happy with the movie, and he spoke well of it.
Yeah.
This was, I think, the second feature for this director, so he's also not been like super prolific as far as feature films, just like Kazuo has not written tons of novels, but he has written a few. Kazuo had some quotes where he sort of had a take that he didn't want his story to be frozen in time. Well, he was very open to someone else interpreting it. Kind of like someone like musicians would take a song and make another version of it. And so he had a very kind of hands-off attitude. Not just approach, but attitude. From what I could tell, he was very happy with how this movie came out. And there was some differences in the movie than the book. And Kazuo kind of was like cool with all of it. And he was just very happy. But I think he had that kind of mentality going into it. And that's kind of like his characters, kind of like going with the flow, you don't get the impression from Kazuo Ishiguro that he's like a real controlling guy. I mean, don't know him personally, but...
That's an interesting interpretation of that, I suppose, but I think I see it as kind of a good fit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, both of them seem to have had... if we're sticking on... Actually, what you're saying does make sense, in a way, because they've both had ups and downs in their careers. They've had moments of success, but moments of downtime, perhaps, or like Kazuo's characters, were... Kazuo's characters were developed, but never manifested into a story until he dipped his hand into, the bio aspect of research, I suppose, for a moment, integrated in it and created a science fiction. So I think the director may have had some sorts of, in some aspects, similarities. I think they cover the broadest themes. The movie covers the broadest themes, but emphasizes the romance and the relationship.
That seemed the impression that I could see when I looked on the internet and looked at critical essays and stuff by bloggers and stuff about it. I did kind of go online and look and see what like some of the differences were. I mean, these weren't really differences. I mean, it has kind of like some text openings, and I feel like it was kind of broken down into like 3 acts, like the traditional Hollywood format with the boarding school, the cottages, and then the residences. And they almost kind of like, show that in the film with some text setting up the different acts. There's narration, there's over-narration by the character, which I thought was pretty fitting with the book, because the book's kind of told from Kathy's perspective. Now the director did talk about he considered doing more of a classic sci-fi setting and setting this story into like a futuristic landscape, and then he decided to go against that. That said, there is like scanners. I think they have like wrist scanners, and the clones, the characters, scan their wrists as they go in and out of the houses. And there's like some medical scenes where they show the donations, and in the book they don't really get into that, right? I feel like the movie is more clear that there's clones. I don't know if Dan, what did you think about that? Did you feel like that when you were watching it that it was clear sooner that they were clones and what was going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think like the first scene in the movie, you see Kathy sitting outside of an operating room where Tommy's about to give a donation. So I think early on, and they try to make you understand the general context with the book.
But that's different than the book, right? I feel like the book doesn't quite get into that right away.
Yeah, I think the book could potentially make you wonder, not understand what really is going on for the first 100 pages.
Yeah.
Where the movie, you kind of understand, okay, this is what the society is about.
Yeah. Although I did see a quote from the director saying, if you were expecting to see a science fiction movie, you'd be disappointed. Right. That this isn't really a classic science fiction movie. But that's how the book is. I mean, that's your point, right, Margaret? Is that they're kind of in line.
Yeah.
They're of the same mind.
Yes. That's what I think because I mean, just in comparing, actually, a book I've read, Memoirs of a Geisha, turned into a movie, so in line with, I suppose, the Japanese theme in some regard. I was very kind of distraught of the amount of things that are omitted, like what's chosen and what's omitted to go from a book to a movie. And in this instance, I felt that they were online, they were both in line with what I, as the reader, took away as what was important. However, the advantage that the director has in the movie aspect to teach you or to show you the technological clues to the clone, is how I saw it with the wristbands, is that they are visually integrated into it. And so that's
but it's still subtle.
It's subtle, right?
It's still subtle, but
comes
it's
to
more,
you faster than when you read the book.
Yes.
Right, Dan?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of...
Yeah. And the director did consciously try to include Japanese like aesthetics into the movie.
Yeah, wabi.
Yeah, wabi-sabi, which is sort of a subdued, austere beauty, or rustic patina. He included the mano no aware, the pathos of things, and yugen, the mysterious grace. So, I mean, I read that the director, he knew that there was some Japanese influences with this. I think he looked at some films, but he also knew that there wasn't, I don't think there was specific films that Kazuo Ishiguro was influenced by, but just more in a general sense. And I saw one blogger commenting, like, there's a scene, I think, at the end where there's like some rags on some wire kind of floating in the wind. And they were saying that was very, like, I don't know if that was like very wabi-sabi, but like wabi-sabi would be like it's almost like they're showing like deteriorated things and the beauty of that. I don't know if I got it right with that explanation.
It's about everything that he wrote about in the book, and
appreciating the imperfections of life. Is that kind of?
I saw it as finding the beauty in everything.
Yeah.
So even in
imperfections and
right,
yeah,
and appreciating the subtleties of where you find that.
And it seemed like, from what I could read about the director, is that he purposely tried to match that tone that was in the book. And it was a certain Japanese aesthetic. Felt like it was achieved. I felt like the movie had like kind of a melancholy tone.
I feel, though, that, I mean, there were some discrepancies in the importance of things like, remember the scene where she heard the song, Never...
let's talk about that. We didn't get into that with the book episode, and I wanted to talk about... So there is an important scene in the book and in the movie where, well, the kids all have the ability to earn money and buy, like, trinkets. And Kathy, the main character, gets a cassette tape that she listens to, and on there is the song Never Let Me Go, which becomes important to her.
Let's go back to the token system for 1 second.
Okay, so this is the system where the students earn tokens for their artwork, and that allows them to buy these trinkets that get delivered to the school every once in a while.
Correct. Then, so what I didn't get from the book was the quality of the items that they were trading. What you see in the movie, which is what I think is the wabi-sabi, am I saying that correct, is that the children are drawn to these toys and these things that are given to them, but they're broken pieces,
Yes.
they're broken dolls, they're broken toys, they're parts
Yeah.
of things, they're used
They're not
shirts.
getting like brand new stuff. They're getting
Right.
like leftover stuff.
So, but those things are still just as beautiful and as important.
them.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point because I don't think I got that from the book. But it was a very much clear, and I did notice that when I was watching the movie that, these trinkets are all like secondhand and broken, but they're cherishing it because that's all they know.
It is said, I think it's in like the first 2 chapters or something, it's mentioned by Kathy. There's some, I can recall where I was when I read this, however, but like it's something to the effect of her recalling that Tommy had a shirt, something about Tommy's old shirt or something that alluded to
in the beginning, when Tommy hits his first tantrum, I think they say Kathy is worried that he's wearing his favorite polo and he's going to ruin it.
And then it would go to the collection or something, and then wherever they get the boxes dropped off of these used hand-me-down parts of things. So I think that all is quite wabi-sabi.
Yeah.
If I'm interpreting it correctly.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting point that they were able to highlight with the movie and maybe even drive home further than they did in the book. Yeah. But back to what we're...
I'm sorry, go forward with
what we were originally saying. The tape. Okay, the tape. So Kathy's playing this tape, and it's got the song Never Let Me Go. And there's a key scene in the book where she is holding, like, I think a pillow, and she's dancing by herself in her room. And I believe she's imagining that... I think she's... Here's where there's a difference between the book and the movie. Because in one of them, she's like... I don't know if she's imagining it's Tommy, because Ruth is with Tommy and she's not. But she gets seen by Madame in the book, and Madame thinks that Kathy is dancing with his pillow and thinking about the fact that she can't have children. And Madame just like gets teary-eyed. Madame, who at that point in the story has showed no emotion and communicates with the children not at all. And all of a sudden Kathy catches her staring at her, and she just has a tear in her eye, and then she just leaves. And Kathy worries that Madame misinterpreted what she saw. In the movie, it's Ruth who sees her.
So it's twofold. So it's about the witness. That's the discrepancy. So the witness to the event, correct? And then the second is the emotion associated with the event and the interpretation that each of the characters have of that was different between the two.
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
Well, I mean, like Dan was saying, I think you were also saying, Margaret, that the movie focused more on Kathy and Ruth's relationship and the love triangle, maybe, whereas in the book, that was not as focused upon, and you more have, like, what's happening to the children in general. So when you have Madame looking on at Kathy, it's more about what the outside world looking in, whereas when Ruth is looking at them, it's, like, about jealousies and interrelationships. I mean, that's kind of what I took.
Yeah. So but I guess what's
the point?
What's the point of why why?
Well, when I saw bloggers, it seemed like that seemed to be when people had complaints. It seemed to be like that was what they complained about.
But I guess why would why would a director? I mean, are we talking in general? It's like, why is this about the interpretation of the vehicle who's presenting the information, or was it a conscious choice that was decided upon between, like, you know what I'm saying?
I think it was a conscious choice. I think the director chose to focus more on the love triangle.
But maybe it was for obvious reasons, because if you had the visual image of the Madame with the tear, it would have given away too quickly about her sympathy and empathy for the children, as opposed to being...
I feel like he wasn't worried about that. I feel like the director was more just he thought he was making it stronger to focus more on the love triangle relationship aspects, which is... It is part of the story. I mean, there is this dynamic between Ruth and Kathy and their relationship, which is kind of strange about how they both like Tommy. So it wasn't like the director made up something new. He just changed something to refocus an element that was already existing in the story. So he emphasized something that was already there a little bit more than it was in the book, rather than like you might watch a movie where they just add something new, like Lord of the Rings when they... or the Hobbit movie when they have like Legolas, they add him in and like, you know, they give like a love interest or something like that. You know, they just to give a love interest. So in this movie, I don't think they just added a new dimension. They just sort of emphasized one dimension more than another. I don't know. I mean, Dan, did you have any take on that, or did that not even stick out to you?
In what regard, in terms of the new dimension?
Well, that scene where Kathy's dancing with the pillow, you know, in that it's different in the movie. I mean, it's from what you said before.
It's about an artistic interpretation.
It is an artistic interpretation, and I think the author was okay with that.
I think the author kind of like wants to see what people will come up with.
Yes,
I guess my question is, why would the director make that different in the film version? Well, like, what is the point? Why couldn't they achieve the same thing that is done in the book? That's my question. I don't know.
Right? Is it just kind of like sort of like a Hollywood thing to do? Like, oh, we're just going to focus more on romance
because it sells better.
Yeah. Is it that kind of a decision?
I don't want to be on record for saying that. I hope not, but it's.
It kind of seemed like that, but then again, and that was like sort of with the criticism I suffer. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, but that dynamic of Kathy, Tom, and Ruth is already there anyway, so it's not like he's inventing something new. So I didn't think it was that bad.
I'm not saying it's neither good nor bad. I mean, I think this entire process of going through the book, through the movie, etc., is about understanding and what it means to be human. And I think that's the overarching kind of the umbrella here, is that this is all about being human versus. So there's your sci-fi. That's the bottom line sci-fi, actually, in my opinion. Does that resonate with you guys?
In what way?
Because it's about, so what you said earlier, you know, what's the difference between a human and a clone?
Yeah, that's a good question in this book, except for basically the roles that society put on them.
And so what are, correct, and then the
and otherwise they seem no different.
Exactly.
Except maybe they can't reproduce biologically, which is, I don't even think they explain that in the movie.
But other than that, other than physical functionality differences, which every human has, what else is different? Because I think they tried to, at some point there was the questioning of, is the differentiation feelings, emotions, the capacity to empathize?
No, but I mean, this isn't Blade Runner. I mean, these are not like cyborgs. I mean, like, these characters are very much human. In the movie, I thought I saw some bloggers talking about that Ruth is ruder to Kathy in the cottages part, and that becomes kind of Kathy's impetus to leave the cottages and start her new role as an adult, as a carer. But I kind of felt like that was sort of in the book too, and it seemed like in the book Kathy decides to move on just because she's frustrated with the Ruth and Tommy situation and she's done with it.
I think I read some stuff about what you're talking about with. I didn't interpret it that way though. I interpreted it as kind of this was the coming of age aspect of it, where they were all conditioned to understand the world a certain way and what they were, and they were in a state of wonder of what they thought they were. They had the opportunity, they were sequestered to the cottages in a way, is what it seems like. And then,
although it seemed like they could leave at any time. They could go to the city, but they could also request to just kind of move on with their life at any time.
But by that point, they understood the basis of what they were, right?
Yeah, it seemed like it. They knew that their next stage was to become a donor or a carer, and that's why the older students, I forget their names, is it Rodney and Chrissy, are trying to look for a deferral at that point.
And then
that's when we learned about the deferrals.
And so the only difference, in like what you were saying in the first podcast, Dien, is the lack of revolt or revolution or fight back or escape. It's almost as if this is like a cult movie too, about being conditioned at a young age to, because you don't know any different. You're not exposed to anything else. It's just, they're sheltered.
But yet they can go to town and interact with town, and they show that.
But by the time they're able or allowed to go to town is once they get to go to the cabins, correct?
Yes, when they go to the cottages.
In the movie, he throws they're playing in the beginning. Somebody's like throws a ball, it goes across the fence, and none of the children even remotely try to jump over the fence to get the ball.
No, right. And then one of the teachers is like, why don't they go over the fence or whatever? Yeah,
And
Lucy,
then
the teacher, Lucy, who gets fired.
the art teacher, and the art teacher was the one who was like,
Calm Tommy down, yeah.
and there was something deep inside of her that she really wanted to tell the truth, and the kids had the opportunity to ask certain questions, and then Kathy reflects on that later as to, like, wish I would have, like, we could have asked her and she would have told us, but she got taken away too, like, and so it's kind of like, look at the title, Never Let Me Go, what does that mean? I think every person is supposed to interpret, every person who reads this book or watches this movie is supposed to interpret it in their own way. Because in some ways it could be a fear of losing a relationship, like with what you're talking about with Ruth and Kathy kind of parting ways at the cottages, right?
Yeah, eventually they part ways and Kathy leaves.
And so what was your question behind that, or your reflection on that, as to why her character was portrayed as different from the book to the movie? Because I think it seemed like Kathy was portrayed as a little bit more headstrong and narcissistic-ish, or a little harder than she really was seen in the book.
Ruth is harsher to Kathy and drives her away, as opposed to, well, but I felt like I kind of felt like the Kathy, Tommy, Ruth tension came to a head at the cottages in the book as well, and I feel like so, and it does in the movie. It felt similar.
It felt similar, but the Kathy in the movie felt less graceful in the book.
Ah, that's interesting. Dan, what is your overall impression of the movie? I think you were telling us before we started recording that you had trouble finishing the movie. You kind of got bored with it.
Yeah. I think I struggled a lot because, I think I've said this before, like, my interpretation of a dystopian novel was there would be some type of main event, and I kept on waiting for that.
Like in Hunger Games or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you read the book, so you knew.
Yeah, and I think you've said this before, after the book, I took a different appreciation of it, and I think that was based on the fact that a lot of dystopian novels don't focus on the everyday feelings and coping mechanisms that people would have in this type of situation, and that's literally what the focus of the book was. So I think I appreciated it more afterwards, but it was an okay read, and I think it's worth to get through.
Did you feel that the movie was true to the book?
I mean, generally,
yeah.
I think the thing that stuck out to me the most is the movie focused really on just Ruth, Kath, and Tommy, where I think the book definitely had other characters. There was more nuances, but I don't know. Maybe that just played better in a movie, but that's what I felt about the movie.
I saw some commentators saying that the whole Hailsham sequence, the boarding school in the beginning of the book, was sort of rushed in the movie, and it happens quicker than it does in the book. Did you guys feel that way?
Like in terms of the kids knowing what their destiny was?
No, just the whole part of them being kids. It lasts longer in the book than it does the movie.
Yes.
And I saw somebody saying that it felt rushed in the movie.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think. Well,
I felt like I got sucked into the book, to the childhood, to the story, to the development,
to the little jealousies and relationships in the as they were kids.
Right, like with understanding who Ruth was as a kid in terms of her setting up the special squad that would
I think they're the secret guardians or something
like that.
So, yeah, some blogger pointed out that the secret guards that they were supposed to defend the teachers, that whole thing is cut out of the movie.
Well, the details of it, and like where the pavilion that they go to, and the chats they have and things like that. That was very illustrious in the book in the beginning in terms of describing their childhood and developing them into adult characters, I think. However, I think it was on the flip side with, not totally the flip side, but there was a less emphasis on the childhood, kind of interplay and more on the love romance story as adults. Is that a
Let's get to Keira Knightley.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, who wouldn't? Come on. But for a book to a movie experience, I think it was interesting. I really do.
Yeah.
I appreciate the wabi-sabi of the process.
Yeah, I felt like it was satisfying as far as a movie adaptation. I don't think the director took major risks and totally went his own way, even though I think the author was open to someone doing whatever. I think
that's why, though.
What do you mean?
I mean, I think this was just a good pairing of individuals who
Just were on the same page?
Well, I mean, I'm not a novel writer nor film director, so I might sound quite novice in this, or I don't mean to be ignorant or anything, but there's probably quite a bit of ego in something that someone creates. So within the writings and the things that I do in my own work, it's very much an ownership thing. But to what degree are people open to having other people pull off of their work and recreate it?
I mean, the reality is that when an author sells their right to make a movie, they usually, for the most part, don't have any say at all in how it's realized on screen. Unless you're like J.K. Rowling's and you have a lot of negotiating power with these contracts. For the majority of the time, authors don't have that kind of power, and the investors who want to make the films, they're not probably interested in having the author have that kind of power. Sometimes they'll have them on as consultants, but they usually don't have to care what the author thinks at all. I mean, we're seeing some differences of that now with, like in Game of Thrones. I think George R.R. Martin wrote some episodes and stuff, but he had some experience writing in TV previously. But it's not uncommon.
What's the point then?
Well, the authors get paid. And
dumb question.
and the filmmakers, they don't necessarily want to work with an author who's going to be all controlling, necessarily. So you can have for this show, I'd say the majority of the time people prefer the book over the movie. But there's been a couple of times where the movie did come across better, and I think it was in times where the director sort of threw out the book and said, "I'm just going to do my own thing." I'm not going to be beholden to the book. And it's risky because sometimes it won't work, or you risk alienating the fans. And I think in this movie, I don't think this director did that. He didn't throw out the book. He embraced it and thought, I'm going to try to capture it as tonally correctly as I can. And I think he does a good job.
I agree with that.
So I feel like he sort of played it safe, but it sort of paid off. Like it's like you're going to watch this movie. I think you're going to be satisfied.
I think he understood.
Yeah, I think he did understand what this book was about.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the important part, I see.
Yeah.
What do you take away from the movie, then?
I don't know that I take away anything different from this movie than I would the book.
Yeah.
That's because that's a good question, And maybe it's an opportunity for a director to do something different. But I feel like if you read the book and then you watch the movie, I feel like you're going to feel satisfied and you're going to feel like it's sort of the same message.
But you're not going to be wowed. You're going to be...
But what if you didn't read the book first? Maybe you would be wowed.
I don't know. No. I think this is for an audience that wants to think about what they're thinking about, and it's going to make you think more, if that makes any sense. You walk away with kind of a, well, in my opinion, like an introspective feeling and awareness of things, or you walk away with, that was a great love story. A little complicated. Well, kind of cloney, but but there's no hot sci-fi, whoa, that big event like Dan's mentioning.
There isn't, but there isn't in the book.
Right, I'm saying across the board.
Yeah.
So these two kind of just seemed like they decided they're gonna do what they're passionate about. Like, this seems like a very true experience. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're hitting the same note tonally.
Right.
The director and the writer.
And that doesn't always happen.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's a miss. Or sometimes the director tries to go in a different direction completely, and it can be...
it's kind of like, this is a disgraceful... Or
it can be. Or it can be a new thing.
Insulting.
Starship Troopers, I think, was when we did on this one, that I thought the director totally, did his own thing, and it was a improvement. But it was improvement. It was an improvement on the book. I mean, like, I can still remember the scene in this movie near the end where, like, Tommy, after him and Kathy go see Madame, and they learn the awful truth that there is no deferrals, and they're driving home, and they have to stop the car, and Tommy gets out and starts screaming. And that happens in the book, and it happens in the movie, but in the movie it still stuck out to me. Even though it stuck out to me in the book, like, I still can picture that actor screaming, and I was like, yeah, he got it. Like, that's that rage, like, of the hopelessness of their situation. What do you guys think about that? We didn't really talk about that. So Kathy and Tommy, like, that's the tragedy of the book, the story. They should have been together from the get-go. They weren't, because Ruth was selfish. Then Ruth has a presto changeo, ask for redemption on her deathbed, try to fix them up again, and she succeeds, and they get together. And for part of the book, Kathy and Tommy are together, and they do to enjoy, like, a loving relationship. But it's short-lived, because Tommy, because they're never going to get deferral. They try and they can't, and Tommy's going to keep going on with his donations and eventually complete. Do you feel like they got something?
Got something in what do you mean by that?
I mean, Dan, what do you think about that? I mean, Tommy, even in the book, it's the same. Tommy and Kathy end up together, but it's short-lived, because we pretty much know Tommy, he's nearing the end of his donations. So what did they get? Like, at some point when Ruth tries to bring them back together, she tries to patch them up, and Kathy's like, it's too late, Ruth. It's too late for us to get together. Like, we're running out of time. Like, this is pointless conversation. But yet they get over that, and they do get together. So do they get something special? Is it worth it?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like those are two separate questions.
Yeah.
One is like, what is my opinion, whether that's something special, and whether the characters got something special out of it. My personal opinion, if you can find true love at some point in your life, then it doesn't matter if it's, for 5 minutes or
short
5
change,
days. Yeah.
Almost.
And then, like, themselves, I don't know. It seems like in the end that they feel that they have, because Kathy talks about him coming back. So I think she's been very pragmatic and practical the whole time up to this, and it's almost like his death allows her to be a little bit more romantic and fanciful about, her seeing him again.
I think in that same vein, absolutely, it's worth it. It was worth it. And how both the author and the director interpreted that made it seem worth it, if that's what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? And I think, like Dan said, 5 minutes versus a lifetime. It's still worth it. And I think the only difference that I saw between the two vehicles of conveying the message, for lack of a better way of saying that, is perhaps the perspective that I had in my mind of, or the character I developed of who Kathy was not as maybe emotional or harsh or intense, I don't know how to say this correctly, at that juncture as was the one that I developed in my mind in the book. I felt like there was more intensity there.
In the movie?
Yes. But now it's all, again, about, like what Dan was saying, the perspective that the person who's interpreting this and talking about this comes from, So as an artist and a scientist or scientific thinking, those two aspects of my life and my perspective are always like your right and left hemisphere crashing into each other all the time. So I think cognitively about things, and then, but also from an emotional level. So I think this all comes down to being about back to your main question, is it worth it? The perspective of the reader, or the worldview of the individual who's absorbing the knowledge or witnessing the movie, interpreting the book or viewing the experience as. But I think they were both very much aligned with one another in how they did this, I suppose. It's the overall gist of my perspective on it.
I just remember some bloggers pointing out the last line of the movie, which is Kathy talking. I'm trying to see if I can find the quote, but they're kind of feeling like that it sort of changes the tone. There's some bloggers talking about how they thought that the book questioned whether or not the clones could love. I felt like they could love in the book. I didn't really feel like there was much difference between the clones and any other humans.
I think it was more about the interpretation of between when they went. It's about the song, and then about Madame and how it was interpreted in two different ways. That the pillow was Tommy, and it was about jealousy, versus the pillow being about a baby, and Madame's tear was an interpretation of her true care and compassion and sadness for what the reality of this was, that they weren't able to have their own children, that they were solely, I mean, think about it, they were cloned simply to be, it's like an auto body shop in a sense. It's like that's their reality, that when a part breaks, their part gets given to someone else.
There is like a subtle line in the book where it's where one of the characters mentions that, you know, you can have a first donation, a second donation, a third, a fourth, but then they said at some point you're going to have so many donations of your organs that you're going to become like a vegetable. And I mentioned this in the other podcast, where you're sort of just going to be like on life support, but they'll just keep you alive to like harvest the rest of you. And I was like, that is the true horror show aspect of this book, just to imagine.
And that's like the moment, probably, maybe that's resonating with you with Tommy, where he just decided he had his last
scream, rage.
And then he was done.
Yeah.
But it was his decision.
Yeah. Again, this sort of like graceful resignation.
I mean, part of the main theme is about defining what makes someone human. The movie is more about emphasized love, perhaps trying to...
And is this never let me go theme about the characters holding on to their memories, and that's what their life becomes, a collection of memories, and that their memories are what make them who they are, and that's important.
But let's talk about that. What does the title actually mean?
Well, it's in the song, right?
But like, what does it actually...
I mean, I think that's what I take away from it, is that the clones, the characters, is Kathy, as a narrator sort of comes away thinking like that she's got to hold on to her memories, and that's who makes her who she is.
And so what did she think she was before?
I don't know. I think she was just living her life, and then she realizes that the temporal nature of life, and just has to appreciate what she had. You know, it goes back to the author's upbringing, not knowing if he's going to stay in England, if he's ever going to go back to Japan, being immigrants, his mother being, from Nagasaki, where the bomb was dropped, the temporal aspect of life. I mean, I don't know. That's what it seems to all come back to me.
I think it's also about the viewer's interpretation of what it means to keep something and to let something go. Meaning...
life is not perfect?
Well, the impermanence of reality. And that I mean...
Well, they do have to let go of their dream for deferral when it gets burst.
Yeah, and how, as a human being, does one reconcile that?
Mm-hmm. How does one continue? But it's like humans every day. How do we get up and function the next day? We know we're all going to die eventually.
So, I think that by them even...
It's like existentialism.
Right.
What's the point of any of it?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. 101.
Well, all right. I think we've been talking about the movie for a while. Why don't we just kind of go around and give our star ratings and any final comments we have. Dan, I'll start with you. I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, how many stars? I know you had trouble finishing the movie. So, like, out of 5 stars, what would you give it?
I appreciated the movie in terms of creating a sense of tension when they focused more on, the movie opens with a snippet about what's going on in that time period and that people are living a long time. So it creates a little bit of tension. In the movie, Miss Lucy talks about what their future holds for them, and I feel the book was very informative on that part. So I think that the movie did definitely create a sense of trying to understand what's going on in this world without boring you, which is what I felt the book did a little bit. So I'm going to give it 4 stars.
All right. Margaret, what about you? Out of 5, how many stars would you give it? Any final comment you got?
I'll say, am I allowed to do 3.85?
You can do that.
I mean, I'd give them both a solid 4 out of 5. I think they...
You can't change your
I can't?
Come on.
All right, then I give them
3.85.
That's locked in.
I don't want you guys have to do like some statistics later or something and strain your minds. I'm kidding.
So you give them the same rating?
I do, and I really am conservative on thinking about that because this is probably one of the first books in a long time that I would consider to align similarly like that. But I think these guys were on point with one another. Some differences in emphasis of things, such as I think the movie was more about love, but the root was still held true to what Kazuo was trying to say.
Okay. Yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys, but I guess I would give the movie more 3.5 stars. Just I liked the movie, and I thought it did tonally match the book, and I thought it was a good movie, and I would recommend seeing it. And certainly if you didn't want to read the book, I'd say go watch the movie, and you're pretty much getting the story. I guess why I'm not giving it a higher rating than the book or equal is because I think I don't know, it just didn't push any more boundaries than the book might have pushed.
Is that what you wanted?
Well, I just didn't think it merited more. I don't know that. Yeah, I guess I would have wanted to see the book try to do something a little bit different.
You mean the movie?
Yeah, the movie. I would have seen like the movie try to push a little boundary. I don't know how, because I felt like this is a very satisfying movie. So I don't fault this director. I like the movie, and I would recommend going to see it.
And this director is a Chicago guy, right?
He's from Chicago.
There you go. Okay, think about it.
So that's an automatic an extra half star.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, this Chicago guy who's got his thing going on here, like, think about he put himself in the mentality of he took these Japanese concepts, he integrated them well.
And he made an English movie.
And he appreciated it.
Yeah, he totally did. He totally did. Yeah, and he's got great music videos.
And these two are, just go listen to some Bob Dylan and then put the two of them in a room and see what happens.
It's going to be a nice jam.
No,
it's a great movie. There's nothing to really take away from it. I just think, I guess, in doing this show, I sometimes like when directors take a chance and do something different. Although, I do love how the director in this movie tried to capture the Japanese aesthetics, and he researched the wabi-sabi and stuff, and he did do a good job of just hitting that tone that the book takes. I don't know, maybe I would push it up to 3.85.
Yeah.
From 3.5. Closer to 4.
But I think, come on, think about it.
It's a great movie. It's
across the board. This wasn't like, whoa, sci-fi blow my mind. Like, I just went into outer space. Realize there's a dark side of the moon.
I don't know that, but I'm not saying you have to do that. You have to go in outer space and see the dark side of the moon. I just think this movie doesn't, stand alone from the book to me. And I guess if it did, I might give it a little bit more.
Oh, see, if it did, I probably would have had higher extremes on each end for
maybe. And that's a risk. I think if he tried to make it stand more alone, it might have made it crappy. So it's not a crappy movie. It's a good movie.
No, and there's something unique about the subtle integration and appreciation of the Japanese aspects of this.
They were done well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would recommend this movie. People to go see it.
But I wouldn't recommend it for somebody who wants like sci-fi, stereotypical.
Yeah, but you might say the same thing about the book.
Right, I'm saying for both.
Yeah,
for both.
Yeah, they're very tonally similar. I mean, it's just if you're looking for a movie that adapts a book and stays true to the book, this is a great example.
Perfect.
You know, this isn't. You're not going to read this book and then watch the movie and be like irritated and say, they screwed it up. They did not screw it up. The director got it on. He got it right.
And the minutia there wasn't such a discrepancy in it that it made you feel irritated that they forgot something
right. Like I said, like the changes that he made sort of made sense. Yeah. So all right, that sounds good. We talked about in the last episode. You can check online Dien's old music project Cicero if you want to do that. Other than that, go to www.nodeodorant.com. Check out our website for the show. We're also on Apple Podcast and TuneIn Radio, and the show usually goes up on YouTube, as well as Google Play, Stitcher, and pretty much everywhere you can get podcasts, you can find us. So other than that, tune in for our next episode, which will be on a different topic. And we'll say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode, or to read our show notes and find us on social media, visit nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseanoreilly.com. The theme music for this podcast was written by John Doyle from the band I Decline. You can visit him at i-decline.com. Voiceover for this podcast was provided by me, Margret O'Reilly. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, thanks for listening to our show. And always remember, there is no deodorant in outer space.